Samson was not weak. He was strong, and that strength defined how people saw him, how he saw himself, and how his story began. From the very beginning, Samson's life carried weight. Before he took a breath, before he made a choice, God had already spoken his name. He was chosen before he could choose, set apart before he could wander, marked for a purpose long before he understood what that purpose would cost. Samson's strength was not an accident. It was a gift, a sign that God was with him. He did not train for it. He did not earn it. It came from above. And with that gift came expectations, a calling to live differently, a calling to remain set apart, a calling that required discipline, restraint, and obedience. Samson grew up knowing he was different. He knew he was strong. He knew God had chosen him. And slowly, quietly, that knowledge began to shape him in ways he did not notice. Because when someone knows they are gifted, they often assume they are protected. Samson began to rely on his strength rather than the God who gave it. And when that happens, discipline feels optional. He did not wake up one day and decide to disobey. He drifted. Drift is dangerous because it rarely feels like rebellion. It feels like freedom. It feels like curiosity. It feels like harmless exploration. Samson went where he was not supposed to go. He touched what he was not supposed to touch. He lingered where he should have fled. Each time, nothing happened. He was still strong, still successful, still victorious. And that reinforced the lie that obedience did not matter. Strength covered the consequences. Success hid the warning signs. And confidence drowned out conviction. Samson killed lions with his bare hands. He broke ropes as if they were threads. He defeated enemies with ease. And every victory whispered the same message to him. You're fine. You're different. You don't have to be careful. But strength without discipline always turns inward. It stops being a tool for service and becomes a justification for indulgence. Samson's story is not one of sudden collapse. It is a story of gradual erosion. Each compromise weakened his awareness. Not his strength, his awareness. That is what sin often does. It dulls perception before it destroys power. Samson still looked strong on the outside, but inwardly, something was shifting. He began to treat his calling casually. He treated sacred boundaries as negotiable. He treated warnings as suggestions. And still, nothing happened. Until Delilah. Delilah was not the beginning of Samson's downfall. She was the final chapter of a long pattern. Over and over, she asked him for the source of his strength. And over, Samson played with the truth. He lied, but not fully. He teased, but not honestly. He stayed when he should have left. Each conversation moved the line. Each moment pushed him closer to exposure, not because he didn't know better, but because he believed his strength would always protect him. Eventually, Samson told her everything, but he did not know that the Lord had left him. And when his hair was cut, something far more serious happened than the loss of physical strength. Scripture tells us that Samson woke up and thought he would go out as before. He assumed nothing had changed. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. That moment, the moment Samson didn't realize God was gone, was the most dangerous moment of his life. He tried to stand. He tried to fight. He tried to rely on what had always worked. But the strength was gone. And with it, his identity collapsed. Samson was captured, bound, blinded. The man who once struck fear into enemies was now led by the hand. The hero became a prisoner. The strong man became powerless. Everything he trusted in was stripped away. In that darkness, stripped of pride and vision, Samson was forced to face himself. For the first time, strength was no longer an option. There was no escaping this moment. No performance, no confidence, only dependence. In the silence of captivity, something began to grow again. Not his power, his humility. Samson finally turned his attention back to God. Not because he was winning, but because he had nothing left. Scripture tells us that his hair began to grow again, but the real restoration was not external. It was internal. Samson no longer stood tall in his own strength. He knelt in surrender. At the end of his life, Samson prayed a simple prayer. Not a proud prayer, not a demanding one, a desperate one. And God heard him. In his final moment, Samson's strength returned, not as a reward, but as mercy. God used a broken man to fulfill a purpose that pride had nearly destroyed. Samson's life reminds us of a difficult truth. Strength alone is not enough. Calling alone is not enough. Talent alone is not enough. Without discipline, even God-given gifts can become liabilities. But Samson's story also carries hope. Failure is not the end. Blindness is not the end. Brokenness is not the end. God does not abandon those who return with humility. Maybe you see yourself in Samson, strong in some areas, careless in others, confident, but drifting. Maybe your fall did not happen all at once. Maybe it happened slowly. A little compromise, a little distraction, a little distance. If that's you, hear this clearly. God is not finished with you. But he may be calling you back to awareness, back to discipline, back to humility. Strength is powerful, but obedience is stronger, and redemption is always possible for those who turn back. Take a breath. If this reflection helped you slow down and think, consider subscribing. This channel exists for quiet strength, gentle correction, and returning to God. You are not beyond repair. You are not forgotten. And grace is still at work.